So the main thing, the main reason why Jomon people stayed as a hunter and gatherers was because of the rich environment. It's very balanced, and talking about resources, it's in a diversity, such a diversity, so many species of plants, animal, insects, and others, and fresh, good water to drink, and everything is in balance. And so it was very easy for them to live compared to the other part of the world. Other part of the world, they couldn't survive just by uh, uh, hunting and gathering. So they really loved to run into agriculture. But they could stay in the old-fashioned style of living for Jomon people because of the environment. Even today, the natural environment of Japan has been really changed. I mean, in the city area especially, but still, it's a beautiful country, and we have still a lot of selection of resources too. So that was a keyword, I think. That's what I believe. And because of that, they didn't have to fight against each other, each group. It's a lot better to cooperate more than strive, fight each other in that rich environment. They didn't have to fight. Okay, so let's start today from the next one, the burial. But I can't really explain about the burial. It's really difficult. We don't see much stuffs in the burial. It's only a pit. And most of the human remains, bones and stuff are gone already. So, and we have less, oh, wait a minute. Burial goods. We don't find very much of the burial goods. Wait a minute. Just a minute. Wait. This is the first, okay. Don't get used to this one. Here you go. Yeah, you've seen this one, yeah? It's a rare case to have this much of ornaments, bracelets, and pendants, jade pendants and stuff. So I really can't tell you the detail about the burial. There are some form of burial, just a pit with the body inside, or sometimes, well, there are a few, maybe one or two coffin type built with the stone slabs. It's really poorly made one, so we can't really call it coffin, but it's a stone surrounded burial. We don't have it much. And what we mostly see quite often is the burial pot like this. This is a regular sized pot, upside down, buried in the pit. So probably it's the secondary burial. When you die, and the body will be left until the flesh is gone, and you collect the bones and put in the pot and bury it like this, probably. We don't really find bones in there, it's in the soil too. And most of those upside down buried pot in the pit has no base like this. It's open. Or either you would find a small hole on the base. You perforate it. You make a hole intentionally. You say, so it's not just a vessel, you have to have an opening so that some things go out and in. I don't know, but maybe so. And so this is one of the practices of burial. And this is kind of rare too. This is another type of secondary burial. You collect the bones and you don't put them in the pot. You arrange it in this kind of specific form. This is a square type of arrangement. And we don't really understand about these. We don't see very many of these either. So, but there are obviously practice of secondary burial. It's not just a direct burial only. And sometimes you may find corpse in an abandoned house. And we don't know about that either, but some of them are like just like a family, 2-3 adults and a couple of kids all together in the house, lying in the on the floor of the house. And some of those houses were burned. So probably it's possible to imagine that they could have died of the infection, just like corona. And even the influenza flu, they could die so easily at the time. It's really serious disease at the time. So if the whole family was infected and died, maybe they, in order to avoid the infection, they burned the house, whole house. That's one possibility too. And also you find some bodies from the shell mound. I think I told you about that, but in many cases, you would find bodies, not only animal bones and shells and fish bones and stuff, but human body too. So that's the reason why I claim that it's not just abandonment as we think today. And it's a waste place, but it's not only for the wasting, but to wish for the rebirth, ですね。再生ですね。And in hope of rebirth of whatever the creature, shellfish, fish, animal, and human beings. And that's the place for the sort of a ritual, maybe. And so probably not only shell mound, but the pit dwellings. I also told you that pit dwellings are a dump place, waste place, after being used as a house. And probably a lot of potteries that's been abandoned in the pit dwelling were also in hope of rebirth. And all the other broken tools and many things abandoned were part of the ritual of the rebirth. And let's see. Wait. One important thing about the Jomon burial is that they have created a burial place, particularly for burial, so like a cemetery. And that cemetery area was always inside of the settlement. They never separate the burial, the cemetery, from the settlement. They've always made it inside, whether at the center of the circular settlement or in other part of the settlement, but still inside the settlement. So the world of dead or area of the dead is inside of your living area. That's very important. That's the Jomon people. And that's different. The practice changes when it comes to Yayoi period. Totally changes. I'll explain that later. And not very many burial goods can be found from the burial. Sometimes, well, not like especially those personal belongings, ornaments and stuff. are very hard to find. And in some cases, you may find a pottery on one side, probably covering the head. Put the pottery upside down and cover your head or something like that. Or sometimes you may hold a large stone plaque on your chest. We don't know what that means, but well, we can imagine, you know, so that the dead body would not rise again, you know, maybe press it down with a stone. Well, I don't know. Well, there are various practices in the burial custom. So there's no united rule throughout the German culture. All right, and also telling from those skeletal remains, some skulls bear teeth like that, those worked teeth, filed. Oh, looks really bad. It must be really hurt. And also extraction of the teeth. These are intentionally pulled out. This one and those four of the lower teeth were intentionally pulled out. And there are that kind of practices in ethnological data in the modern time too, in Southeast Asia and other parts. You know, they do it for the ritual, the passing ritual, like adult passing ritual, seijin giru, whether you can tolerate the pain or something like that. You know, that kind of, we can't imagine that, but still they could do that. And also there must be the differences of the pattern of, do I have the chart? Oh yeah. There are several patterns of extraction of the teeth, like R type, L type, 4I, 2C. There are various types of extraction and filing of the teeth. And some archaeologists classified them into various types and found out that this depends on the tribes and groups depends on the area too. And sometimes you may find two types in one group of burial, one settlement cemetery. You may find like this one and this one together. And sometimes mainly this type, but some of them are this type and they were female or something like that. So they would be imagining that these female ladies came from the other community, you know, as a bride or something. You know. So by studying this kind of teeth extraction practices and patterns and classifications, they could read some rules about the marriage between groups. That's possible. It's really interesting. Well, not everybody do this, you know, of course. So we don't really know that it was a part of the passing ritual or not. It sure is a tribal practice and aerial practice too. All right. And we're going to more difficult part, the spiritual world. Ceremonies. Let's see. No, where's that be? Anyway, this picture shows experiments of burning a pit dwelling. You know, a lot of pit dwellings we found from the sites are burnt down, and we find a lot of charred post, charred beam, and you know those wood parts of the upper structure of the house. And obviously they were burnt down, but we don't really know whether it was accidental fire or intentional fire. So some people, got together and did this kind of experiments, burning the house, and what's going to be of after that, and what's going to be the remain of that, the result of burning, intentional burning. And it's really, really interesting. You can't really distinguish them from, accidental burning, accidental fire. It's really difficult to. Anyway, oh. Right. So let me talk something about the ceremony, ritual, and stuff. And the ritual, originally, we don't really know the origin of the ritual and ceremony and those spiritual world. It's very difficult to imagine about those. It's very difficult to prove anything in that world, but we can imagine to some extent from the evidences. Originally, the ritual or ceremony were thought to be the very group practice of the to 世界観の共有って言うんですけどね。They have their world vision. Of course, they had so much time to observe the environment. They accumulated so much knowledge about the natural environment, all the animal, plants, minerals, water, insects, whatever, or celestial information like sun, movement of sun, moon, stars, everything. Clouds, rain, wind, and everything, And so they could not have the scientific knowledge like we do today. But they were the same human beings. They were the same Homo sapiens, and they must have had this strong curiosity, intellectual curiosity that led them to understand. They wanted to understand the world. And there's so much mysteries, so much things that cannot be explained easily in the world of the nature. So they must have created their stories. They must have created their explanations about everything. And that's their vision of the world. And I'm not sure about the content of the vision, but they must have one vision of the world for sure. And for that, they could survive, and maintain their community. But everybody is different. Everybody's free. And if you're personally, if everybody's acting freely, then you can't keep your community in shape. It's going to be all distorted, and we're going to be separate. So in order to keep the community in one form, you sometimes have to get together and say, oh yeah, this is our vision, this is our thoughts, this is our belief, and realize that we are living all together as a community member, right? So this is the beginning of the ritual or ceremony, I think. There must be a lot of various kinds of ceremonies too. It's related to nature, like rebirth stuffs too. And of course, life and death, related to life and death, related to the passing. There are several passing points in your life, like becoming adult from child. And when you get married, when you have first baby, and so on. And when your child get married, or something like that. So in every passing point, they may have some ceremony or ritual too. Or when you get sick, when you have disease, infection, etc. they must have certain kinds of ceremony, ritual to heal the disease too. Yeah, we really would like to know the content of those ceremonies too. But and in terms of space, there is a model concept made by Japanese archaeologists that their lives in space like this. This is a house. They're dwelling. It's the Ie house, isn't it? And outside of the house is the village. It's an artificial space inside the village. But inside of house, outside of the house, uchi and soto, inside and outside, is one, not just one contra concept, isn't it? And the same thing could be seen from village and outside. This is a field. Village is inside and field is outside. And your entire field of activity would be inside your area. And there are still the area outside, right? There may be a border, like mountain chain or something like that. And maybe over the mountain, over another area too, would be other world, anoyo desu ne, other world, that you may get there when you die. You know, it may be a sky, it's an upper world, or underground world, or in the water that you cannot live. So anyway, there must be a multiple construction. I mean, the structure of the world concept like this. It's just a model. And always you are in the group that where you were born, your family, your relatives, your blood kin group, and that's the base of your community. And of course, you have your history. You have your father and mother and grandpa, grandma, and grandpa and grandma, and so on until your ancestors, you know. And because of the ancestors, all of the ancestors, you were given your life, right? And everybody knew it in ancient time too. So they were obviously thankful, and they have paid much respect to their ancestors and elders. And that's really basic of worship. And that's a part of the beginning of the ritual and religion too. You know, the earlier form is the ancestral worship, right? And that could be also part of their world vision too. And not only the environment, but including human beings. Then you have to talk about your ancestors too. And so in order to practice, in order to carry out those ceremonies and rituals, you have to have certain areas, certain space, especially for that purposes. You can't really do it in your house or right by your house. They could be the central plaza of the circular settlement or outside the settlement too. This is one example of Oyu stone circle in Akita Prefecture. There are two circles. This is one, another one, a couple hundred meters away. And obviously these were especially made area. And we don't know the content of their practices, but obviously they were doing something, some kind of ceremony. And they were studying, this is a part of it, I think you've seen this one, but this is about that stone circle. Maybe this one right here. And another one right there too. It's only one of the erected stone in each circle. And we don't know why there were two circles. Well, somebody made a study of the direction of the two. It's kind of close together. But you see, that's the erected stone right here. And if you connect the center with the other one, it's on one line. So obviously it was related to some kind of seasonal practices. In this direction is the sunset direction of the summer solstice, Geshi desu ne, summer solstice. So probably that was one keyword for the ceremony that took place in this area, this stone circle. That's a possibility, of course, but it should not be a coincidence. And there are so many features, ceremonial features in the world that's being related to the seasons, you see. And this is another type of ceremonial structure. It's so vast, so wide, and so many stones were brought in. And we can't really tell, but there is one small stone circle right here with an erected stone column, stone rod, phallic symbol right here. And another erected stones right here and there. Each surrounded by a circle. And it's a complicated structure. And this is a Yamanashi prefecture. And so much variety in shape and size of this kind of stone-made structures, ceremonial structures in Japan in Jomon time. So we can't really tell anything in detail about those, but it's obvious that they had this kind of practice, spending a lot of time and energy just to create those features, right? And it could be a plaza, it could be a stone circle, and it could be a wood circle too. And those were called monuments. And this is a reconstruction of a wood circle in Ishikawa Prefecture, Toyama desu ne, Japan seaside area. There are several of these in the adjacent area, Toyama and Ishikawa Prefecture. And we can't really tell the height of the wood. This is made from a huge tree, huge log, split in half. And the half split logs aligned in circle like that. And this is kind of entrance flag, or two flags placed, you know, say like a entrance area. And probably these were higher than this, a lot higher than this. And this is famous one from Sannai Maruyama site, Aomori Prefecture. And the previous one too, but this one also, only the base underground of the log was found not rotted. It was still in there because it was a humid, very wet type of area. And so the upper part was all gone, disintegrated, but the lower part was still remaining. And they measured the hardness of the soil underneath the log and calculated and reconstructed the size of the log like this, over 20 meters. It's a huge wood of a chestnut tree. Well, those wood circles are mostly made of chestnut tree. They grew like crazy, huge, huge tree. And this is a reconstruction of it. And 6 of them are aligned like this in rectangular shape. beautifully aligned. And we don't really know the purpose and function of these. And this reconstruction has a floor, three-story floor, but we have no evidence that they made a floor. It could have been just the columns, only columns, 6 columns standing like that. And I believe that way too. They don't have to have this floor, because some of them thought that this must be something like watchtower or something. So they wanted to make a floor. So there's no evidence for that. And what happens about this feature is that, well, they also studied about the direction of this structure. And this is what they saw: winter solstice, the sunset day. You see, those are 6 columns. From the center, the sun sinks into the horizon. So this must be related to those seasonal things, isn't it? And sorry. Well, you can see that same sort of alignment, stone alignment and stone monuments related to the seasonal directions. Like the famous one is Stonehenge in England, and it's also related to this. I think it was equinox. I forgot it. But, obviously, there's certain lines where the heel stone, the sun goes down straight along the stone alignment. So, and the northern part of Europe was once dominated by Celts, the tribe of Celts. And we celebrate Christmas in December, end of December, but this was after like 2,000 years ago, right? But before that, there were Celts living in that area, Northern Europe. And one of the, it's been said that one of the biggest ceremony, biggest ritual is the winter solstice ceremony, isn't it? Winter solstice is like December 21st, right? So it's very close to Christmas. So this huge ceremony or festival became or were transformed into Christmas. That's what they say. That's one theory. But anyway, and this ceremony or festival of the Celt was to celebrate the death of the winter, because the winter solstice is the day that winter ends. You know, from the next day, the daylight becomes longer and longer every day and approaches to the spring and summer. So the winter solstice, December 21st, is the day that winter dies. That's the timing of the celebration for Celts. The same sort of things could have happened in various parts of the world in the prehistoric time. It was so important, especially in Jomon culture, that I just mentioned, that the environment was so rich and the 4 seasons are so clear. And it was important for Jomon people to distinguish the seasons. And they have to have a milk mark of the border of the seasons, and which is solstice and equinox. Shito Bun desu ne. So probably this is one of those practices. And why they had to make this kind of huge things? You don't have to make it so big. It's a lot of work just to cut down those huge trees and bring it down, drag them down from the mountain to the settlement area and erect it. How many people do you need to make this kind of structure? You know, you can't imagine. Hundreds of people have to work. And that's also another reason of this kind of ceremony or ritual. Just like I said, to unite the community, to maintain the community, you have to have your thoughts together. You have to bundle everybody together. And this kind of work, just one object, goal, what should I say? Everybody work for one purpose and share their thoughts and share their labor together for many days. And that's a good chance to bundle and tie their people together as a community member. Well, not only one settlement. I mean, the community means the wider community, including various settlements, including the central settlements like this Sandai Maruyama, the headquarters settlement. And it's interesting, I forgot to mention about this in the house story, but there is a standard or norm of the size or length. It's called Jomon Shaku. Shaku is a unit of the length the old-time Japanese were using. It's about like a foot. 1 foot is about the shaku, one shaku. And there is another things, the same sort of things existed in Jomon community, in which was 35 centimeter. It's really interesting because like these space between two columns are always the multiple of 35 centimeters. It's like 2 meter, 80 centimeter or something like that. So it's 8 times, 7 times, 8 times 35 centimeter, always. And not only this structure, but various those ceremonial structures based on the norm of 35 centimeter. They have this regulation. They have this standard of size, length. And remember the big house, big pit dwelling, oval shape, with 4 fireplaces inside. And there are post holes alignments, post hole layouts were also based on this size, 35 centimeter, multiple 35. So it's pretty obvious that in Jomon community, Jomon society, they have this norm. But when you talk about the personal houses, each pit dwelling, normal pit dwelling, there is no such rule. There is no standard of size and length at all. Even the number of the posts, they don't have that regulation. Some houses may have 4 posts, some 3, some 2, some 1, and some of them have none, no post hole. It's incredible. And 5, 6, there's no rule. And the layout and distance between posts, we have no rule at all. So ikagen. And the size and the shape of the dwelling too. You have no rule. You're free. I mean, it's not only free, but you don't really care about those things, for normal houses. But when it comes to this kind of structures, you really care. You really have to have this norm. You have to follow the strict rule. And you know why? Because you need it. If 100 people working together, if you don't have a norm of the length or standard of the length, it's going to be all distorted, and you can't construct anything in decent form. So you have to have a rule when the community is big, and you have to have a common sense, common unit of length or weight or whatever. So it's really easy to understand that those units and standards were developed in the later time when the community was bigger and bigger, and people were more, the structure is complicated, and everybody has to communicate to accomplish one work. You need it. So it's really interesting to think about it, the birth of this kind of standard. In very standards, normal size of German settlements, German community, they didn't have to have those norms, right? But once when they decided to make this kind of things, they have to create those standards and norms. Okay. So this kind of monuments would tell you a lot of things too. All right. And animals, of course, you are dependent largely upon animals still. They're hunters and gatherers. And a lot of wild boar figurines exist, but we don't find any of deer figurine. Maybe it's kind of hard to make. The legs are too skinny or something like that, too fragile. And those antlers are very difficult to make, of course. But they did make a lot of figures of deer in the Kofun period as haniwa, the burial, one of the burial goods for the king's tomb. But in Jomon time, they never made deers. We don't know why. There are many explanations, but we don't really know. Boars are better to eat, one would explain. And boars would bear many babies at a time. So that's the symbol of, fertility. So they like the boar better than deer. That's what they say, but I don't know. It's difficult. But boars were very important, obviously. And you've seen other type of figurines too, of the boars. And so some of these animals, particular animals, could have had a social value. We don't really know. And like a pelagic fish, like tuna, bonitos, there are large, very fast swimming, very difficult to fish, very heavy fish. And it must be really, really, really difficult for German people to fish one of those because they only had canoe, dugout canoe. And it's really dangerous to paddle them out to the off coast where those tuna and bonitos were passing by. And they're going really fast, They're going like 40 kilometers per hour, 50 kilometers per hour all the time. So by using a paddling canoe, it's really difficult to catch them. But they were catching them. So they must have had very specific value. They are not the same fish as other smaller fish that you can fish from the coast. We don't really know, but and I thought that's my personal belief that well, it's only possibility, but it must be one of the passing ceremony too. When a boy wants to grow and become an adult, you have to go out to the sea with adults all together, but you have to catch one bonito or one tuna to become an adult or something like that. Because in shell mounds, you find a lot of fish bones, but you also find bonito and tuna fish bones, tuna bones, but not in quantity, very few, very, very few. So it tells you that it's difficult. It was difficult to fish them, and also probably it was fished not because of food, not as a food resources, but for a social value of certain kind, I think. Well, there's so much for imagination. And this is from Hokkaido, where they also caught ocean mammals, and like seals, and this could be seals. We can't really tell, but it looks like one of those seals, ocean mammals. And it's all decorated with the latest German pottery decoration, and painted with a red lacquer. And you find all these erasing technique of Jomon all over. It's really interesting. And oh, let me go into the next story. The secondary tools, second tools. They're not the daily tools, but the there are so many variety of these second tools in German period, and not the daily use tools like pottery and arrowheads and axe and stuff like that. But you can't use it for your daily life. They're symbolic, sometimes symbolic, and must have a certain value, for German people, and especially those with the. You have to have a lot of time and energy. You have to spend a lot of time and energy to make one of these, and that would add value. Additional value was added to a certain kind of ornaments and stuffs. Then you will have more stronger value for the people. And they could express a part of their vision of the world into this kind of various material. And so they could also accomplish their desire to express their thoughts, not only on the surface of the pottery decorations. They could spend a lot of time and energy to express something, express their thoughts into some kind of form. And it could be used. I mean, the material could be like clay, stone, whatever, wood, or whatever you can acquire in that world. And especially this kind of, these are jades, particular to Niigata area, Niigata prefecture. It's only the source is in that area. And the jades, the hard kind of jade is very, very hard. This is a second hard material from diamond. So it's really difficult to perforate one of those. These holes are perfectly round. So obviously they were using owl perforator by rotating the tool, so that they could get this perfect round holes, even in these small, tiny hole. They were perfectly round. So obviously they were rotating to perforate this hard stone, but with what? And you can't really find the adequate material for the tools, perforation tools, but except for bamboo. And probably bamboo's right, because there are many examples that's not being finished, that's not being perforated perfectly all through. And to a certain depth, it's being perforated, and you will have, wait a minute. Okay. This is the cross section of the bead, halfway perforated, not all the way. And you always have this one sticking out at the center. That means it was perforated by something like tube. And anything hard that you can think of at that time from nature is a bamboo pipe. You rotate the bamboo for many hours, many days, many months, maybe. And they could use a certain kind of sand, kongosha, very hard kind of sand. It's like metal mineral, and so that it's like a sandpaper, using sandpaper. apply sand right here. Apply water and use maybe hundreds of these bamboos. You have to consume hundreds of bamboos to perfect one of those jays. But they did. Okay. So in many cases, those secondary tools, bears this additional value of the time and effort, labor, and everything, right? All right. And even some potteries, these cannot be thought as a cooking pot. You know, this is bottom black, top red. This is the upside down. And these are not, these don't bear the characteristics of a cooking pot, right? And I think I've told you, but some people would believe that these were used for brewing alcohol from various fruits like wild grapes and kiwis, original species of kiwis and stuff that they had in Jomon time. And other would believe that these were used as a drum by putting animal skin on top and fixing it by putting pegs into those holes. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. But some people do experiments. So, well, it's possible too. Anyway, and they always bear specific kind of designs too. It's really hard to tell. This looks like a human figure, morphologic. Head, body, arms, legs, not quite legs, not quite hands. Another hands growing from the part of the hands. So it's really imaginary. It's so abstract design, probably based on human body, but it's not human. They are expressing something else, I'm sure. And we have to talk about figurines. There are so much figurines. You don't always find figurines from all the sites, but sometimes you find hundreds of figurines from one site. So it's really peculiar. And there's no certain theory about the figurines. There could be various functions of the figurine, and depends on the area, depends on the time too. And these are all fragments. Not single figurine was found complete, except for one or two, I guess. But mostly they were broken, but they were not accidentally broken, but they seem to be broken intentionally. So this is a collection of broken figurine from Yamanashi Prefecture. This is Shakado site. They had a big pit filled with this broken figurine. It's a rare case, but and let's see the transition of the form of the figurine. This is one of the incipient German earliest type of figurines. And they don't bear head or face, and only body and breasts, sometimes stomach sticking out. And obviously a woman figure, but we don't know what they are. And into the middle Jomon, it's still a plaque type. It's not three-dimensional really, but more expression of the face and earrings, ear ornaments, and sometimes head dressing too, and breasts and stomach exaggerated. And into middle Jomon, Nagano Prefecture, it's more three-dimensional. And stomach sticking out, and they often bear a vertical line along the stomach, which is called pregnant line. Is that the correct term in English? 妊娠線ってですね。Pregnant line. As the baby grow and the stomach swells bigger, but you have a limit of your stomach flesh, so this it creates a crack, you know, as it expands. It has a crack, vertical crack, and that can be seen as a line. So some of those figurines bear those pregnant lines. So it's obvious that they were pregnant, female figure, mostly. And this one was found complete, was not broken. But it's a beautiful one. They call Jomon Venus. And there's a specific head dressing, a head, well, I don't know, hairstyle maybe, but it's very, very interesting figure. And kind of small, but stomach sticking out. And big buttocks, of course, to hold the babies. And this is different types. You know, they're all different, you know, so much variety in form and balance and style and decoration in figurines. This is the north part of Japan, Yamagata Prefecture. No face, it's only some kind of head dressing and some kind of shoulder protector-like things. I don't know. And still the stomach is sticking, like pointing out with a vertical line, long legs. It's really rare style. Yeah. And this is rare too. This is just one example existing, ever found. It was not found from excavation. I don't know, somebody found it underground. It was passed down. So we don't really know where they found this one, but it was found in Tokyo area. Too bad that the mother head is lost, but there's a baby, mother holding baby, giving milk. And the way she seats, you know, bending knees, feet and things. It's really realistic. And you can see the baby face too, eyes and nose and mouth. It's really easy to understand type of figurine. But this is the only example of this type. And more stylistic type in the Gunma Prefecture, heart-shaped head. And still breasts, tiny breasts are sticking out and with a pregnant line. This stomach is not really obvious, but it's so stylized, you know. It's a very rare case too. Well, everything's rare, of course. But and other type in later Jomons, yeah, this is more plaque-like. It's not really three-dimensional. It's from northern Kanto to Tohoku area. They have this triangular head type. It's triangular because they bear these big ear ornaments, you know. So it looks triangular. And you can see those patterns like pants, wearing pants of whatever, animal skin or whatever, and stomach sticking out. Those hands are very interesting. These bent type hands appears from the late Jomon. It's a kind of fashion, I think, in a certain area, certain time. And this is another rare. I'm showing rare ones only, you know. And it's from Fukushima. It's a seating figure. It's a female figure, but those arms are very specific pose. And some people would say, "Oh, she's praying," you know. But some others would say that, "Oh, she's giving birth right now. She's holding a rope that's suspended from the beam, and she's giving sitting birth." How do you call that? Bearing baby in a sitting position, sitting style. It's easier because you can use the gravity, so the baby comes down. And that's one possibility. And other types with a lot of ornaments, big ear ornaments, and eyes and mouth are all the same expression, but big ornaments with a very complicated hairstyle, and painted, of course. And you know, those hand, arm position, arm shape, and leg shape are kind of similar to the other one, like this. You know, this is kind of close in the arms and legs. You see, it's a close style, I guess. It's not too close, but. And this is toward the end of Jomon period. This is the latest, final Jomon period. And this is Shakoki Dogu って言いますね. One of the goggle type. This looks like a snow goggle. You know the snow goggle? In the northern polar area, the Eskimos, they hunt the sea mammals and others, you know, icy environment. And they're totally covered with snow, and everything. The world is white, and when you have a sunshine, it's so bright, and you can't really see the distance. So they use goggles like this. There's one slit right here, very fine slit, only one slit, and you peek through this slit. So that all the reflections from the ice and, you know, snow, and the reflection of the sunlight comes from various directions, and they all come into your eye. So it's so you can't really see anything. But using this goggle, you avoid all the unnecessary reflection, so you can see it, the distance. So especially the hunters of the northern area, they use this kind of, and that's why they call it snow goggle figurine. You know, the slits. We don't know. Maybe true. And many people would say, "Oh, this is a spaceman," so extraterrestrial uniform, you know, but they're not. You know, these designs are common with the Jomon pottery that they were making at the same time in the same area, and those, you know, erasing technique and those spirals and stuff are all the same with the other artifacts. And also look at this wrist area, wrist and ankle. It's choked, you know. In the northern part, even in Japan, in winter time, it's really cold. So if you wear some kind of cloth, you have to close up, you have to tie it up, you know, at the opening like this. So it reflects the climate of that area too. So this is an entire body cover type clothing of Jomon people, I guess. Well, it's stylized, of course, you know, but still, it's not an extraterrestrial story. Anyway, so you see so much variation of the figurines. You can see, oh, this is even more strange in the latest Jomon in Yamanashi Prefecture. It's not like human beings anymore. It's not like a female or male or whatever. We don't really know what this is. This is a disintegrated type of figurine, maybe. And oh, so time's passing so fast. Okay, let's have a break for 10 minutes and we'll meet again from 4:40. You have any questions so far?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, have a break.
Okay.
Okay, are you back? So, you- back to the figurines. Oh, so there are so many theories about the function of figurines, clay figurines in German period. And since the variety, the designs and decorations and so much variety exists, so we can't really think of the only one function. And since there are mostly the female figure of pregnancy, so it's really natural to imagine that they were related to, giving birth and having more babies, more uh, raising populations, and for flourishment of human beings and communities. And they were hoping for that, obviously. And of course, that's the same story with the Paleolithic time in Europe and other part of the continent, that when they made Venuses, so same kind of figures, so same kind of thoughts could be believed in German people, among German people too. And at the same time, there are so many figurines found broken. These are in good shape, but so mainly what you find is the part of figurines, like legs, only legs could be found, arms and heads. You hardly find heads, but so there's another theory that they were intended to be broken. And one function would be something like, なんていうんですかね、人型って、in Japanese it's called 人型、man figure っていうんですけど、it's replacement of your being. Like when you in trouble, like when you got hurt, when you injured, when you went hunting and broke your arm, and you can't fix it, and it's so painful, but so you would come to this village, and maybe somebody like shaman would bring out one of those figurines and do the ritual and replace your pain, your injury to the figurine. So you would break the same arm of the figurine, you see. And that could be in the practice too, because it was also popular in the historic time, like in Nara Heian period, especially Heian period in Japan too. They used a lot of those magical figures, human figures made of wood. That's called hitogata, and that could be another function of those broken type of figurines too. And there must be a lot of other functions, and we really have to make more studies on that too. And the reason why we believe that these were intended to be broken is that the construction of the whole figure were separately made. You can't you don't make the whole body, including arms and legs, from one block of clay. They always make body, legs, arms, and head separate and stick them together. So probably they were intended to break it after finish making it. So that's one theory. All right. And other than figurines, there's something like that. There's also made of clay. It's a clay mask from late German period. And it looks like this face bearing another mask on the face. It's kind of weird figure. There are a lot of holes, perforation along the chin. So probably some kind of hair, animal hair were planted to express a beard or something. We don't really know. And notice that many of the figurine and this kind of stuff has those lined eyes shut, closed. So I may think that some of those represent the dead, not the alive people, but the dead people. And maybe the spirit. We don't know, of course, it's only the imagination, but why their eyes are closed like this, you know. So there must be a lot of ceremonies or rituals related to the death, not only the funeral, but you know, some kind of specific ceremony could have been carried out. And other types of clay material, which is not for daily use, obviously. It's a designed plaque. We don't know anything about these. Some plaques bear holes, so probably stringed and suspended or something like that. We find a lot in northern Japan. These are a little more easier to understand. There's stamps, hand stamped or a foot stamp on the clay. And these are very small. So obviously they are of the small baby, sometimes maybe a newborn baby. And we do that. We do this still today, right? I don't know about the Western culture, but in Japan, we always do that. We use ink and paper to make stamp, hand figure, feet figure of the baby, newborn baby. And it's a part of a ritual so that the baby would grow in happiness, grow safely and healthy, you know, that kind of parents' wish in that kind of form, takes that kind of form. And probably that's the same sort of thing in the Jomon period, the same condition. You can really imagine that easily. And sometimes it has a perforation, holes, so that it could be suspended in the house or maybe from the kid's neck, possible. And this is really elaborate piece made of clay and painted with red lacquer. This is realistic, you know, really realistic of the conch shell. But actually, we don't have this type of conch shell. Well, it's similar to certain species, but we don't have this kind of designs on the shell, you know. So it's a modified type of decoration too. But it's part of the vessel, I think. This part is could contain liquid or something for ceremonial use, I guess. And there are a lot of mushrooms in the northern part of Japan. And we don't really know about these either. They look like shrooms, but of course, shrooms are in various species, and we find a lot of kind of shrooms in Japan, probably in Jomon time too, in certain season, and they're very good to eat. But sometimes they're poison type, and not to say poison, but there are specific elements that make you laugh or release your muscle, or you know, those negative effects. And sometimes it may be may give you illusion effects to your brain. So probably these are of those kind. They're a very specific type of shrooms. We don't know. But why they have to make these clay shrooms, you know, must be very specific kind of shrooms, I guess. And stone column or rod. We don't have an English term for this. We've been calling column But some people would say it's better to call it rod, just rod, stick, you know. And this is a bigger, the biggest one is even bigger, I think. But, huge stone column. It's obviously a male symbol. And I've shown you this one too. And they're in various sizes. The smallest one is like a 3-5 centimeter, very thin, like thinner than pencil, you know. So they are really symbolic. The shape is the same, but the sizes has a variety. And they're choosing very beautiful greenish stone mainly for those smaller type, and they were finished beautifully. The one I showed you at the beginning of this class is made of a rough stone, but it's also made okay. It's a fine finishing. They're beautifully finished. It's round, perfectly round. You see. So they must have, well, if you reconstruct it, it's over like 50, 60 centimeters, maybe more. So must be a lot of work to do just to finish one of those. So if most of the figurines were female symbols, and you know, since they're pregnant, they're also female sex symbol too, and so these are male sex symbol, and it's really interesting. You know, these sexual roles different. You know, they were expressed in different shape and material. It's really interesting to think about that. And there are so much stone tools which cannot be used daily for daily life. And especially those figurines and stone rods and these kind of things appeared from the latter half of Middle Jomon period, when they had the most population growth, and they had the most number of settlements, and those potteries all flourished, designs are wild and everything. And right after that, they started to make these kind of things. And they were making more and more of these into late Jomon period, the next period, and into the latest period. And this is called sword, but it's not sword. You can't cut anything. It's the shape of the sword. And if it's a model of this real sword, probably the sword would have come in from the continent at the time. It's possible, because they had sword already, the metal sword. And it could be, these could be a replica of those, but we don't know. We don't really know. Could be different, totally different things. Falchion. Falchion is very hard to explain. It's a type of, falchion is the word for a type of sword. In China, in old time China, they used a very thick blade, wide blade sword. You know, sometimes the Chinese pirates swing those big blade swords. That's falchion. And it looks like falchion. So that's the only name they could think of to name one of those. And somebody would say, these are mainly found from the northern Japan seaside. And some would insist that these were actually used for knocking head of the salmon. It's really a weird idea, but I don't think so. It is beautifully polished, well made. And this one looks like a male symbol, and this part maybe have a groove all the way through up to this part. There's a groove, so maybe a female symbol, male symbol altogether. I don't know. And this is more mysterious. We don't know what this is. It looks as if you could haft it. You can put handles underneath and tie with a cord right here, you know, the depression area. And you can use it like a hammer, big hammer, stone hammer or something. But none of these bear any use mark at the end or anywhere. It's totally beautifully polished and finished, and that's all. It's not being used. And it has a flat bottom, so it sits like this. It has a stability. And Gyobutsu Seki. Gyobutsu is the emperor's property. Gyobutsu is the emperor's property. The reason why is when they first found those in early 20s and 30s in Gifu Prefecture, the central part of Japan, they didn't know what they were, but they were so beautifully finished, made. So they dedicated to emperor. So that's why they're called Gyobutsu Seki, emperor's property Seki. You can't think of any other name, you know. So it's not really an adequate name, but mysterious objects. And we call them crown, but they're not crown at all. It looks like crown, do they? I don't know. They could be all hafted too, hafted. And this part could be used as a hammer. But I don't know, it looks like a phallic symbol too. What do you think? And these, this is not just a block of stone. This is polished and looks like a roof. This is a ridge, and a slanted part, and on the other side too. So it looks like a roof. And this one too. This looks like a pit dwelling upper structure. So, well, we don't know what to call them. So they called crown in all time, and we still call it the same way. They're all beautifully finished. And wooden material like calm, you know, obviously there's a calm figure, but not for combing your hair, but this is to stabilize your hairstyle ですね。曲げっていうのはなんていうかね、roll up type of hairstyle. You fix it with this comb type of ornaments. This actually is an ornament, you know. The upper part is the main part of the material. It's a design and also red painted. So it's a part of your hairstyle fashion. And there are other type of combs, of course, not only this shape, but various type of designs exist. And ear ornaments. And this is a slit type ornament. You pierce your earlobe and extend it bigger, and you the lobe go through the slit, and you hang this ornament from your lobe, you know. And many of these are kind of weak in the upper part, so are broken. Many of them are broken, and those perforations were made after that, just to fix it by tying with a cord or something. So obviously they were treated very important too. And the design of these also exists in China, early time China. So these could have been brought in. The first design is brought in from China, probably. There could have been many single contact from the continent in Jomon time, because they had the craft, they had the canoe. So it's really dangerous to go cross the ocean, Yellow Sea, this rough sea. So they could have been brought in from, I mean, through Korean Peninsula too. But we don't find much of these in Korean, Paleolithic Korean culture. So we don't really know, but the origin could be China. And there are a lot of clay ear ornaments we call ear plugs. It's also pierce type. You put hole into your earlobe and extend it, spending time putting larger ones. And finally, you would put something like this. This is over 10 centimeter diameter. It's a pulley type. Pulley type means from looking at the cross section, it's like that. You know, there's a groove all around, and some clay types are like that. It's a pulley type. It has a groove on the side. So these two, you see, this is the groove, wide groove, so that it stays in your earlobe, doesn't slip out. Oh yeah, we found only one of these from our site, which you were going to dig, but too bad. Let's see. Here you go. It's very small, less than 2 centimeter diameter. And it still have a hue of a red lacquer on the surface. It's kind of broken on the edge, but it has a pulley shape, the groove all around. You see, so it stays in your earlobe like that. You know. This is a pulley type, very simple. This is a back side. You know, it's not decorated. It doesn't look good. But this is a front side. It has to be in front, right? How's that? Okay. Right. So it's not a popular artifact. You don't really find it often, very often, but sometimes. You know, various designs. And these are so elaborate ones. These are carved out. These are also made of clay. They're not made with, you know, adding technique, but they are carved out, carving, and so delicate, and also painted red. So they must be something really special. They're found in Chofu City and up in Gunma Prefecture too. It's very, very beautiful ones. And various types of stone ornaments, ear ornaments. How do you put your earlobe through this slit? I don't know. So they may not be the ear ornament too. They could be other function like pendants and stuff too. And something like magatama, yeah, wolf fang type, and unknown shape type. You know, these we don't really know. The natural stone shape type, and those elonged type. We see a lot of these too. And stone quality has so much variety too. Not only jades. We don't find jades in here. Not in here. As you can see, they liked the greenish type of stone. They're all green type of stone. These white ones has a slight hue of green color too, and these two. So Jomon people really, really love the green color. And magatama type pendants. These are jades, mostly jades. And I think I told you, but these were originally from the fangs of the wolf. wolves. And you also find a lot of pendants modeling the shark teeth, or using the real shark teeth too. And so these are common in the concept, probably, because the wolves are the strongest, the most fearful animal for human beings on land, and sharks in the ocean. So they could easily take your life away. So, and the most strongest part, the most powerful part of the wolves are the fangs, and the most powerful part of the sharks are the teeth. So that's what they wanted to bear on their body. They wanted to bear the strength and the super power of the animal, probably. That's why they started to bear this kind of stuff. And these are modeled after. And becomes more popular and popular in the later time, like Yayoi period and the Kofun period too. And in the Kofun period, these are not the belongings of the regular people, but the men in power, like kings and royalties. And jade ornaments, these are huge ones. We call them katsuo bushigata. You know the bonito cake, the dried bonito that makes rich broth in Japanese food culture. It's really indispensable, but it looks like a bonito block. So we call them katsuo bushigata. It's a huge block of jade. It's so hard to find these, yes, and perforated beautifully, all of these. And this is amber, kohaku desu ne. It's transparent. It's resin of old time, the dinosaur time. And you could find those in the northern part of Japan too. I don't know about this whitish one, maybe a part of the jade, I'm not sure. And this must be, I don't really know. I don't really know about this black one too. Maybe olivine, kind of olivine. But these are jades, those four of the jades. And so much variety in pendants and necklaces and beads and stuff, you know. And some we don't know the function of these either. These are made of antler, deer antler, in the branch part of the antler. And this is a carving. And designs are similar to those of the pottery, of course, of the latest German. And these were mainly found from the man's dead male body around the waist. So probably erected symbol, male symbol or something like that. We don't really know. We call them hip decoration because they are found from the hip part of the dead body. And bracelets, and not all the shells were used for bracelets, but these particular kind of species of shells were used for the bracelets, and they were from the Southern Sea, warm water, sometimes from the Okinawa area. They bear this kind of shells a lot. So they were imported from Okinawa, I'm sure. Not these. These may be from the Southern Sea, but not to Okinawa. But in later time, there are a lot of bracelets made of Okinawan shells too. And other things like, there are bracelets and anklets made of a boar fang too, boar fang. You know, carved fang, two of carved fang tied together with a string could make a bigger ring, like an anklet. Ashikazari desu ne. And also musical instruments. Obviously, they were enjoying music not in the way we do maybe, but for especially the ceremonial use rituals, maybe. And this is a clay made ocarina. You blow in the hole into the hole. Well, the shape looks like a sea mammal. It's one of the sea mammals, like seal. You blow in the hole and make sound. And this is a clay ball, but the inside, this is X-ray of the clay ball. It's open inside and has some clusters of clay particles. And it's a shaker. You shake it and make sound. And this is called harp. Koto desu ne. It's made of wood. It's a plaque. And two parts sticking out. And it's broken on one end, but the other ones would, oh, I'll show you. Oh yeah, the other ones would have pointed end. And this one has pointed end, but you can't see it. Pointed end with 4 holes perforated right here, 4 of them. And obviously they are stringed instruments, and you could put 4 strings, turn right here, 2 of them here, 2 of them here, and 4 of them tied into the hole. 4 stringed instruments. You know, these 2, they always have those 2 pegs sticking out. And we're not too sure about this because they call it koto, harp, Japanese type or Chinese type harp, but you can't produce sound. I'll show you. This is a replica. I only put 2 strings. These are small type, so I put 2 strings and bamboo sticks attached. So the strings would be apart from the body. So the string would vibrate and make sound. And let me try making sound of it. Just a minute. Kill all the noise. Okay, listen. Let's see. Can you hear? You hardly hear anything, right? You can't use it for ceremony. You can't use it for ritual, you know, if you can't hear anything, right? So it's nonsense. It's just a pluck. It doesn't produce, it doesn't amplify the vibration of the string. So you can't hear anything. But the reason why it has this shape, the one end is very pointed, small, is because what I believe is they are used like this. Can you hear it? Maybe you can't still, but it amplifies. Do you?
No.
No, not at all. There's a microphone here. One of the reasons is I'm using the hemp fiber string, the plant fiber strings. It's not very hard, so it doesn't vibrate well. So if you use something like a gut, you know, animal gut and tendon or something like that, those animal protein type of string, then it would be harder and it vibrates more, so it would produce better sound. But anyway, but obviously it amplifies the vibration when you use the mouth. And there are various types of musical instruments in the world that uses your mouth as an amplifier. So Maybe you don't. Anyway, so that's my theory. This was used as this, by using mouth bow. Oh yeah, they call it mouth bow. And there are various mouth bow in Africa, in Polynesia, like Hawaii, called instruments called ukeke. They exist in Hawaii. It looks just like this, in traditional instrument in Polynesia too, in other parts. And northern tribes in Japan, the native tribes, Ainu uses a different type, not strings, but the bamboo vibration instruments called mukuri. Also uses the mouth as an amplifier. So anyway, it could be the type of the instruments. Right. And clay bells, perforated, suspended, and it's open inside. And maybe you can put some clay piece inside so it hits the body and like a fooding wind bells, it makes sound. You don't find these very much. It's kind of rare. And also the pot could brewer maybe, but could be drums too. And this is a guy, actually, this is a guy who makes it and reproduces it and performs that. And he gives all the concerts, and he made the CDs and everything, using this kind of drum. And it produces good sound too. It's okay. You see all the wooden pegs stuck into the holes just to fix the animal skin. So anyway, and there are very small type of this pottery too, like less than 20 centimeters. So you can't really use that for drums. I don't know. That's possible. Anyway, so there are many ways of sound producing instruments too. And I'm sure they were able to use that kind of things through ceremony or ritual, not their daily life, I guess, but like stringed instruments. How the stringed instrument was found was pretty obvious because they were a user of the bow and arrow. When you shoot the animal, the bow strings produce sounds, So that must be the first step to realize about the sound producing instrument. Anyway, all right. So you have to do another one. I'm sorry, but we have to stay longer today. Let's go into the final ones from Jomon to Yayoi. All right, just a minute. Okay. Let's see. Oh, just a minute. Before we go into a story about Yayoi, I have to wrap up about the Jomon period too. I mean, I think I already talked about it, but the keyword is the sedentary style of life. But at the same time, what made them possible about a lot better life was the environment. The rich environment of Japan was the keyword for Jomon life and Jomon culture. And there's so much development of pottery design and other things were thanks to the environment. And also, and not only thanking the environment, but another thing is that Jomon people were so aggressive, so well, it's not a bad word, but they were so much. How do I say? They were going forward, always trying to lead their better life, they spent so much time and effort, and they thought and thought and thought and created so much systems, so much technologies, and abandoned the old technologies. They were so fast to abandon those unnecessary technology, even though they were very super excellent technology. You know, the kind of, they're going forward always. They're aggressively developing and exploited the environment, and they were the kind of people. All right, but they were also dependent, always dependent upon the nature. So they have to rely on those rituals and ceremonies too, because they were totally dependent upon the nature, you know. But the gods and nature wouldn't listen to you, you know. So what happens is the decline of climate wouldn't stop from the latter half of the Middle Jomon period. And also, that's the time like Mount Fuji became activated again. In Jomon time, they didn't see the Mount Fuji that we see today. It's not the beautiful Mount Fuji at the time. It was like a bell shape, we call. It's like a hanging bell shape, you know, round type of mountain, and didn't have a gentle slope or anything. That's old style Fuji that Jomon people had seen. But towards the end of the Jomon period, the Fuji eruption took place many times, and to create the new type of Fuji that we see today. And that also gave so much effect to the environment, of course. Not only Fuji, but other volcanoes also erupted, I guess. And especially the eastern part of Japan, where Jomon culture flourished, got so much damage. And the ecosystem did not come back. And however they prayed, however they made stone tools and figurines and stuffs, their lives didn't come back in a better shape. And the population went down so badly. The number of sites decreased so rapidly from late Jomon period, and they couldn't survive. Many people died, maybe. And so the Jomon economy system did not work anymore, and they were at the loss. They couldn't do, they didn't know what to do. And that was a time when people came in from the continent through Korean Peninsula into the northern Kyushu area. And there were the farmers of the continent, and they were growing rice, and they brought the rice into Japan. And they were not the big scale immigrant, you know, only small people, small group came in one by one, I guess, not at a time. But the new type of economy was so much, gave so much difference to the Jomon people. And Jomon people didn't know what to do about their survival, and they found it. They found a new style. They found a new thing, which is very excellent, the rice. And they jumped to the rice cultivation. And you see these faces reconstructed from the skulls, quite different. The left side is Jomon people, and the right is the Yayoi people, those continent people that came in to Japan. And they're all basically the same species of the Mongoloid, but quite different gene-wise. And these types, Northern Asian type, we call, and these are called Southern type, isn't it? Bigger eyes and bigger cheek and bigger nose, bigger mouth, wider face, and stuff like that, more hairy. And they used to believe that those people from the continent just ostracized Jomon people, just kicked out Jomon people and started dominated their land and started the Yayoi cultivating culture. But as the archaeological investigation proceeded, and we were finding all the bones of the Yayoi people, not in this type, but these types from the Yayoi villages, So actually, they were not the Yayoi people, but Jomon people who took over and, adapted the Yayoi culture and became a Yayoi people. So they abandoned their long tradition of Jomon culture because they couldn't survive anymore. And they found a better way of life by cultivation. And so the earliest rice cultivations was started from the Kyushu area, northern Kyushu area. And it spread really rapidly up to Tohoku area in a couple of hundreds of years. It's really rapid. And that indicates that, Jomon people all over were so wanting for the better way of life, better economy. And they all jumped to the cultivation. And they abandoned all the pottery tradition and stuff. They all made the different kind of pottery, like Yayoi style. And so it was okay, for a certain time, certain period. They were okay. They could survive. They could make rice, and they didn't have to starve. And so it was okay. But shortly after, they were into more different kind of trouble, because the cultivation requires land. You have to have land for cultivation, and also water. You can't do without water source. And since Japan is a small island country, so land is limited, water is limited. And when they expanded their villages, expanded population, they were becoming short of land, short of water. So they started to fight over the water and the land first. And also the crops like rice or other grain, millet and other grains too, they were growing. And these were storable. They could store it for a long time. So, and they could they could harvest them in quantity. If they had a good plan and good labor, they could make it in quantity, so they could have a lot of storage of the grains. And that becomes a property. That's the beginning of the real property, I think. And naturally, there were villages did not have much storage, while others were rich in storage of the grains. 格差が生まれるんですね。So the differences would lead them into the struggle and fight. And that's what happened in the Yayoi period. Over land and water and crops, storage of grains, they fought over. And strong villages would overcome the smaller village and take the land and water rights and crops, and probably people too. And maybe that's the beginning of the using of slaves too. The defeated village people would be the slave of the others, stronger ones. And you see the evidences like this. This is a Yayoi village in Kanagawa Prefecture. And you see all the pit dwellings, 4 beautiful post halls, not like Jomon type of pit dwellings. You can really see the difference. But it's just like a German settlement. It's not in a round shape, but it's in a hilltop of one of those hilly area. But what is so different from German settlement is the moat, the ditch surrounding the village. This is a protection ditch, protection moat. They have to build these moat to protect their villages and the people from the attack of the others. You see, we always see this kind of moat and ditches around the Yayoi settlement, which we did not see in German time. That's the sheer difference. So the warfare begins. They like to kill each other, just to overcome and get more land and properties. And so they could not live in peace like German time anymore. And that's the beginning of the warfare, and the warfare just kept on and on and on until just recently, right? Okay, that's a big difference. And let's see. This is, it's kind of hard to see, but there are settlements on the hilltop. This is a hill. And on top, this is under the excavation, I think. These are the remain of the settlement right here and here. And so it's low land that they could make rice paddy and, those field for cultivation area. And these Kochi Seishurakuですね, highland settlement were mainly made in the western half of Japan. Not in the eastern part, but obviously they were a fort-like protecting settlement up on the hill. You work in the field in the daytime, and at night you go up to the settlement on the top of the hill, probably surrounded by a fence and everything for protection, so that it's not very easy to attack the people upland. So obviously they were always under the fear of attack. And so many bones, burials that include many bones in Yayoi period show this kind of remain. This is a tip of the stone dagger into your vertebra, your bones. So this really killed him, I guess. So the dagger is broken here, right here. So the tip remained in your body, and he probably died from it. And arrowheads, dagger, or whatever, and some bodies didn't have head cut off and head smashed. So much miserable indications they would show in the Yayoi burials that German burials never showed. And new style of burials for royalties, maybe high-class people. Huge pottery, double pottery was made to make one coffin, jar coffin, isn't it? And some of the burials, there's a lot of bracelets on the right arm. And what else? Oh, so much beads and necklace stuffs around. You see the round thing right here. And this must be the guy in power. And as they fought all the time, and the strong village, strong settlement would be bigger and bigger, grew bigger and bigger, and accumulated so much power. And probably the social classification started from that time. And there was a leader, very charismatic leader, who would lead the entire big settlement. And probably this is one of those guys. And he also has this strange things made of bronze. Bronze. This is actually a weapon called, I don't know the pronunciation of China, but this is a Chinese weapon. Let's see. Some Chinese people tell me, but this is a character. In Japanese, it's called ka. Ka, maybe sha or something like that in China. But this is a weapon, bronze weapon made into something like a dagger. Like this. It's a perforation here. A pointed blade. But it's kind of tilted and it's not straight because it was hafted like this. And the long stick, it was hafted like this. And it's a famous weapon for artillery. There's the low-class soldiers, they all carry this on their shoulder. And they were used in the warfare. It's a weapon, actually. And it was good because it's not like a spear. It's a straight pointed spear, but it has an angle. So you stab it into the high-class people on the horse. You know, it's really, it has a lot of merit to attack from the high place. So if you're on the horse, you're very strong. But if you use this and drag him down from the horse, you know, this is the object of this type of tool, not only just stabbing the people, each other. And so this weapon came into Japan, but it did not become popular as a weapon in Japan. They didn't produce it so much. And look at the size. Normally, the real weapon is half of it, like this size, like 1 foot or something like that. But it's long one, big one. You know, you can't hold it as a weapon. It's a heavy thing made of bronze. And obviously, this is the symbolic, monumental things to express his power. And so you can see the obviously see the classification of society from these kind of burials, which they didn't see it in Jomon time. And there's a Yayoi pottery, different from Jomon pottery. And this resembles to the Jomon shape, the fukabachi, deep bowls. It's a parallel cooking jar, although it doesn't show the color difference. It's the opposite. And the major type that they made a lot in Yayoi period is these jars with a narrow neck. These are designed for storage, and mostly used for the storage of grains, the harvest, you know, and they were put into the storage house. And as you see, the designs are so simple, very beautiful, but refined, but very simple, and has no projection, no attachments, a little bit, but and nothing like Jomon. A little bit of you can't really see them, you know. And some lines, incised lines, but that's all. And many of these are painted red, so it's a totally different tradition of pottery. And there are local differences in jars too, the jar design too. It's a Fukuoka, Kyushu, southern type, Osaka type, western type, middle Japan type, Aichi, Pacific side, and Tokyo type. They are all different, somehow close, but all the jars, but different. And interestingly enough, in the eastern part, in Tokyo area, you bear very fine jomon. It's a corn marking right here, the band. And it's also the erased decoration, the erased effect. That's in the tradition of Jomon pottery styles. So probably some remnant of those technology were still descended down to the later people. It's very fine. You have to go really close to see the fine, beautiful code marking, but not in the other area. They're all painted red and attachments, and you know. And other type of potteries, like pedestal ones, you know, in Jomon time, they were eating on the floor. They're sitting on the floor and eating from the potteries placed on the floor. So the food were very close to the floor, and probably dust and other stuffs would come in. So maybe some of the high-class people in Yayoi period, they would hire something like this. And cups, you don't find much of these cups, but there are some of these in Yayoi, and other beautiful pitcher type of stuffs. There's a handle on one side, and you can pour the liquid from this end. And these are more of the Korean type of pottery styles. There is so much influence from Korea too, and not in the large, huge group, but they must have had a constant flowing in of the people from the continent, and especially from the Korea, through Korean Peninsula. So they always had various influence from Korea too, from the Yayoi period on. And stone tools, reaping knives. These are not sharp at all. Some of these are made of shell, mostly stone. Those blades are not sharp at all. It's not a blade at all. But you put a string through these two holes, and you put your middle finger right here into the string and hold it. And on the blade, you would fix the top part of the grain, like rice or wheat, and you fix it right there and twist, and you just break the top part off from the stem. You know what I mean? It's really simple. You know, just it's not a cutting or anything, but it's just breaking, just dragging it off by hard material. And also a lot of agricultural tools were made of wood. And those hoes and various those eburiっていうんですけどね, those flat plaque that make the rice paddy flat, smoother. And other part of material, they were also user of the stone tools too at the beginning, until they introduced the metal. And these are Jomon arrowheads, as you already seen, but these are Yayoi arrowheads. And you would notice the obvious difference. It's bigger and heavier, because these smaller ones in Jomon time were designed to catch animals like boar and deer. But these were used for human beings. So weapon, it's not designed for hunting. So wartime weapons. So they're more heavier and bigger. And daggers, stone-made daggers, and the metal. Bronze comes in first, and pretty soon after the iron comes in. The iron's very hard to make, but the technology just rushed into Japan in Yayoi period also. And these are daggers, longer daggers, and these are spearhead. It's a big one. Huh? Probably these are ceremonial too. It's too big for actual use. And some other bronze material like this. This is a second tool, isn't it? But not like Jomon time. These second tools, not designed for daily life, the property of certain people in power, very top people, kings and royalties, and those limited people would own this kind of very important rare material. These are originally bells. These are originally musical instruments in China called hensho. I don't know the Chinese pronunciation, but it's like a piano, from a small one to big one. You make alignment and you you perform the melody by hitting different sizes of the bell. And but that came into Japan somehow, one by one, not in set, but so the one single bell became the single power, and they became in different design. This is Japanese design. This has nothing to do with Chinese bells. Their original design was developed, and the size became larger and larger, and some of them became over 1 meter big. And they are not the bells anymore. It's just a symbol of the power. And those secondary tools did not exist in Jomon time, just for certain people, right? And so finally, mirrors, bronze mirrors, were also the symbol of the power in China at the time. And towards the end of Yayoi period, there was a big grown settlement. It's not a settlement anymore, but it's like a country. It's a huge country by the time. The strongest group became the country of the center. And one of the leaders was a lady called Himiko. It's a shaman. Did all kinds of magical things, And she sent some people to China to dedicate to the dynasty king. And the king gave them they brought all the gifts. And king gave back some stuffs like this, this is Chinese bronze mirrors. Interestingly enough, this particular design does not exist in China. So it's obvious that they casted a new design of mirrors just for Japanese leader. And there's an inscription in old-time China that describes all about it. And they gave 100 of these mirrors to this queen, Himiko. But actually, it's also interesting that through the excavation of Mounded Tomb period and stuffs, we are finding more than 100 of these, over 500 of these, probably. And it's probably because all of them are not original. They made copies. They knew how to do this kind of bronze metallurgy. So it was kind of easy to make copies. But very interesting that these Chinese characters, shown in the original mirrors, and when they copied it, when they made the mold, they didn't know about the character, so they made it like this, just like this. So actually, when they made the mirror, the character turned upside down, or right side, left. So obviously, some of them are Japanese-made, locally domestic mirrors. And anyway, and let's see. I forgot so many things. Wait. So obviously, towards the end of the Yayoi period, they started trading with the other country overseas. And the country becomes bigger and bigger into or in the big area, dominated the big area. And probably the first country that we should call is named Yamato. The first emperor would be the leader of that Yamato country, and into the Kofun period, the Mount Tomb period, they were still making advance and expanding their territories, and powers were so big that they could let the people make their own huge grave. Okay, and not only the material that they could renew, like potteries and things, but all the vision of the world or value also changed from Jomon to Yayoi period. Obviously, you can tell. And for example, Jomon people would know so much about natural elements, so much about the creatures and climates, and minerals and celestial phenomenons and everything. And they named everything, I'm sure. But in Yayoi, into the Yayoi period, they had to have this other labor, which is agriculture or metallurgy, metalwork. And those particular works requires a lot of knowledges too, specific knowledges, which is not necessarily related to the natural environment. And since they had to accumulate those, they had to acquire those knowledges for technology and labors, they couldn't hold onto the original natural knowledges, so they abandoned it, just like the Paleolithic stone tool technology. However excellent it was, they didn't need it anymore. They were eating rice, they're using metal. They don't have to make stone tool anymore, and they don't have to learn about the edible plants anymore, So they decided to forget about it. So their view, their range of the view was narrowed, very narrowed to particular knowledges, particular world, compared to the wide, vast knowledge of Jomon people. That's a big difference, I think. And also, the classification of this society, it's kind of difficult to imagine, but when people were starving and facing the calamity, and if one of them have very specific talent or knowledge or experience or wisdom, whatever, then he could play an important role, extremely important role in the community. And he could be the leader, of course. And if he can lead something like agricultural technology activities, then he would be the leader. And so on, when people are in trouble, serious trouble, and they would all like to have somebody that's reliable, like charisma, So they all wanted the charisma, and that was a very easy condition for the certain people to seize the power. And that's probably one of the starting of the classification of the society. And also talking about the spiritual culture, and that's one thing, the narrowing of the view, world view. And probably the knowledge would be deeper in specific field, but the variety and diversity of knowledge was narrowed, obviously, and into the other next period, and it was narrowed and narrowed. And just like us, we don't know anything about our environment, and they also sought for the efficiency, of course. They have to always follow the efficiency, and they had no spare time, no spare energy anymore. They had to devote everything into agriculture and survival. And natural environment was different from Jomon time too. So people naturally went into that kind of different world, and their value changed, of course. And when you don't have spare time and energy to spend, then your creativity will be lower, and your diversity will be narrower and lower too. And you don't really care about the personal things. You have to look at the community for survival, for agriculture, for protection, for warfare. You know, your personality doesn't really exist anymore, and you don't really care about each things like Jomon people did on pottery design or whatever, stone tool design or whatever. The kodawari ですね in Japanese that Jomon people had, they all lost that in Yayoi period. So different. And the burials, and as I mentioned before, in the Yayoi period, they separated the cemetery from their settlement. They never included the dead body in their settlement. They just put it. You know, they made this cemetery burial area, but like 100 meters away, you know, from the settlement. So you know, that also reflects the change of the world vision that includes the lives and death. You know, the dead people belongs to the different world, of course, but the different world were next to you in Jomon period, but they didn't like that. They didn't like that in Yayoi period. They didn't like that idea. They had to separate the dead from the living. And so I kind of believe that into Yayoi period, they were more into their own world, not the community world. Your own things. You care about your own things more than other people, more and more. And just like separating the cemetery, your relatives, your parents, when they're dead, they would be separated. So you know, it's kind of different. You're more into yourself, you know, and so that also leads to the classification. Depends on your ability and how you looks and you know everything. It's so easy to classify people once you start thinking about yourself only, and ostracize others. You know, can be seen everywhere now. Even now, you hear about the racial trouble in the States nowadays, and you know that happens all the time everywhere. But it seems that they didn't have that in Jomon time. You know, they were so much into maintaining your group, your community. But you don't fight between community either. So everybody was in your territory. Everybody was in your world, and everybody lived together. Not only human beings, you know. That kind of concept was probably the major beliefs in Jomon time, I suppose. I don't really know, but from all these evidences, that's the thought I would believe now. There may be other explanations too, but anyway. So, wow, 6 o'clock already. So that's about it. And let me wrap it up once more about the relationship between natural environment and human beings. Very simply, let me put it very simple so that it's easy to understand. Let me see it here. Nature, human, and Paleolithic. Paleolithic time is glacial period, very cold, not much resources, very hard to survive. You have to follow around the animal. You don't hope for the stable life, but you struggle so hard to survive. And it was a very hard time, but they did well. But the force of the nature was very, very strong over human beings. The human beings were controlled by nature almost, but they struggled over a little bit. In Jomon time, was more moderate. The nature was more moderate, more better condition for human beings, very kind nature. And human beings also did active action towards the nature, developed and exploited the environment. And it had a good balance, between nature and human. And into Yayoi period, the force of the nature was about the same, but the power of the human beings was accelerated, and they started to control over the nature by agriculture. And also, I forgot to say, but the domestication of the animal was also the control of the nature, right? So this is too easy maybe, but it's really easy to understand type of figure when you think about the nature and human beings relationship. This kind of change of the balance of the power between nature and human. And well, the reality is more complicated, but this is when you make it really simple, this would be the explanation so that you would understand the whole change of the culture also, and what beliefs and whatever. But all the lifestyles changed from Paleolithic to Yayoi period because of the, firstly, from the natural condition, the environmental conditions change. That was the biggest thing. But at the same time, always human beings had this attitude towards the nature, right? And I wouldn't say this is a bad thing in the Yayoi period to take control over, but totally different world. As the change has taken place between Jomon and Yayoi, and that's the obvious fact. Okay, do you understand that? All right, and I hope I would have more time to explain more things, but I think time's up. So please prepare and write good reports, and let me have fun reading it. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions so far? You can send me email all the time, anytime you want, for asking questions and comments or whatever. Of course, please write comments on the. I would feedback on the Moodle. Okay. Anything else? I forgot one more artifacts found in Mitaka City. This is a known artifact, perforated. It's a hole. And this is made of stone, but it's pumice. It's one of the lightest mineral. It's so light, lightest mineral, and it came from the volcanic activities, eruption. This kind of particular porous, very porous, a lot of air inside. That's why it's so light, and would fly from the volcano, and they picked it up and perforated it and use it for what? Pendant. It's kind of very coarse, rough surface. So nowadays you rub the heel, harder to heal. Just use it as a file. But I don't know. Jomon people would use it for what? We don't really know. but these were found from the settlement in Middle Jomon period in Mitaka City. Okay, so much stuff. This is a stone, naturally rounded stone. You see, it's shining. It's very smooth, natural stone made of, I think it's a chert or something. We find it a lot from Jomon settlement. We don't know the function. There's no trace, there's no indication of being used as something. You can rub it, rub the pottery to make it glow or something. But some of these stones are very small too, like half of this one too. But always, these kind of stones are always beautiful, their color. It's a kind of yellowish, orangish color. Some stones are green, some stones are blue, red, black. But they're very pretty. So maybe people would find it from the old riverbed and pick it up and bring it to the settlement in abundant sometime later, I guess. But it's one of the mysterious artifacts. Nobody made a study about this. Yeah, sometimes I would like try to make one, but so many stuffs, so many interesting stuffs. Right? Any questions? And also, if the schedule, I mean, the entire society schedule come back to normal, in autumn time, I will provide a laboratory method in archaeology, kokogaku jishu. That's in Japanese, but mainly we would go out in the field and dig the site, excavate the site, and would do some inside work too, washing pottery, laboring, those things. And also I would give lectures too, but the content of the lecture would be almost the same as this one. Because those classes, if you guys are taking those courses in autumn, then I would go into more detailed stuff. But many students that takes that course will be the first time to take archaeology course, and they have no basic knowledge. So I have to start it all over again. But I would give more detail and different type of information in that class too. A little bit. The major thing is the field work and actual work with hands. If you have more time, I would show one thing. Did you know that tissue paper tears in one direction only? Not this direction. We can't. It's broken. Okay, what I'm going to do is to make cord. This is how you make cord between two fingers. You twist it hard, and bend it, fold it in two, and twist two at a time together. Then you will naturally twine like this. See? See? So this is how you make cords. In Japan, they normal people always did that until quite recently. But we don't do that anymore. And you fold it again and twist it in one direction together. Then you will have the cord. This is the cord that Jomon people used to decorate the pottery. You can try that with a tissue paper. And I'll show you one thing. You can't break it with all your force. You can't break it. It's so strong. Just using 2 strips of tissue, you can make the strongest cord. try it. This is one of the last technology of Japan. Right. Any other question? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So have fun writing report. Maybe it's kind of hard, but please try to have fun. Enjoy your report. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So hope to see you around. I haven't seen you any of your face, but hope to meet you in later time. All right. Okay. And I've been digging the right by Honkan and Natural Science Building, and we're doing the test dig for about 4 months from now on, from this week. So you may come around and see me digging in all sweat and dirt. Okay. All right. I'll see you. Have fun. And thank you for joining this class.
Thank you for your lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.